Afterglow Movie Net, Saturday, 10:30 p.m., W5FC. W5FC.
This is N5BB. I'm going to start Skynet in about 3 minutes. If you need to use the repeater, please go right ahead before Skynet starts. This is N5BB, net control.
Chairman, I need to make myself very clear. If we uplink now, Skynet will be in control of your military.
But you'll be in control of Skynet, right?
That is correct, sir.
Skynet.
Calling all hams, calling all hams. Does anybody need to use the repeater before we begin the 9 p.m. Skynet? This is N5BB, November 5, Bravo, Bravo. My name is Bill. I'll be your net control for this session of the Dallas Amateur Radio Club Skynet. Skynet is a weekly net called every Saturday night at 9 p.m. concerning the subject of astronomy. Our purpose is to help amateurs become more familiar with the nighttime and daytime sky, astronomy, and space in general. The net is open to all amateurs interested in this topic, and we encourage your participation, your comments, and your suggestions for this net. Stations with priority or emergency traffic may enter the net at any time using a pro sign break and your call sign. This is a directed net. Please do not transmit without direction from net control, N5BB. Stations are reminded to identify the end of your transmissions. This weekly net operates at 146.88 megahertz with a PL tone of 110.9. You can check in via Echolink using W5FC-R station ID or Echolink node 37247. And I will be up on Echolink in a few seconds. Tonight's topics, astronomy charts, pictures, and live audio video links are available online. Go to www.w5fc right now for the complete list. You can also check into the net electronically by going to the club website, w5fc.org. Look for tonight's announcement and click on the hot link to check in. You enter your call sign, your first name, your location, and how you're checking in. I will then acknowledge you later on the air. And don't worry, if you want to check in via voice, we'll continue to do that too, over the air and Echolink, if you don't want to use the electronic check-in. All amateur operators are welcome. You do not need to be a member of any amateur radio club to participate. The net's 90 minutes long, structured in several parts. General announcements, the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas, National Space Society, recent astronomical discoveries, discussion topic of the evening by Net Control, was up, space exploration and space history, constellation of the week, space launches of the week, that's launches of the week, visible satellite passages over the next couple of days, and if we have any, we will answer astronomical questions and answers. All amateurs licensed to transmit this frequency are invited to check in. So right now on the web form, I have the following people that are checked in. K5MCD Cody, K5ICX Tom, KF5SDS Jeff, KE5JIT Randy, NV5S Virginia, K5KTX Kelly, WB5OZL Brenda, myself, N5BB, and Tony, NT5TM. So, do we have any short-time check-ins? If we have any short-time check-ins, please come now with your call sign, your name, and your location. This is N5BB, Skynet.
Kilo 5, Juliet, Delta Whiskey, John and Coppell, short time.
Recognize John, T5JDW. Do we have any other short-time check-ins? Okay, do we have any general check-ins for RF? Again, you can check in electronically or you can check in on RF. If you want to check on RF, please come now with your call sign, your name, and your location. This is N5BB, Skynet, RF check-ins.
This is Alpha Golf 5 Papa Mike, Rich and Rockwall, AG 5 p.m.
Hotel Chaz.
Farmers Branch.
Oh, let's hold on. There's a multiple double there. First, I'd like to recognize AG5 PM Rich. Next, Chaz, did you try to check in?
That is correct. Chaz and Bob the Cat, KF5JHA.
Okay, I recognize KF5JHA, Chaz. Was there a station in Farmers Branch?
Sure thing. This is KG5 UFR. Jacob, actually not at work tonight, Farmers Branch.
Okay, KG5 UFR. I've got you, Jacob. Okay, now, moving forward, do we have any other check-ins via RF to Skynet?
This is Whiskey Bravo 4, Mike Foxtrot India, WV4MFI, Ted Dallas Low Power.
This is Whiskey 5 Golf Uniform Sierra Gus, far northeast Dallas.
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Zulu Bravo Lima, Bill, Farmers Branch. This is Alpha 5 Alpha Hotel, Robert Richardson.
Kilo Echo 5, Echo November, Eric in Plano.
This is Kilo Juliet 5, Charlie Golf Tango, James in Dallas.
Okay. Recognize WB4MFI. Hello, Ted. W5GUS. Hi, Gus. TF5ZBL. Bill. AA5AH. Robert. KE5EN. Eric. And KJ5CGT. Do we have any other RF check-ins for Skynet? This is N5BB. Looking for RF check-ins.
This is Kilo Golf 5 Echo India Uniform, David, St. Paul, Texas.
Okay, I recognize KG5 EIU David. Okay, let's now look at Echolink. W5 BLT, Bill, do you want to check in on voice? W5 BLT, are you there, Bill? Nothing heard. He may have stepped away. Let's see who else is on here. Several stations have already checked in electronically. N5LIG. Dale, would you like to check in on voice?
Evening, everyone. This is Bill, November 5 Lima India Golf.
Very good, Dale. Where are you located?
LIG.
Oh boy, it's not coming over, Dale. The audio kind of broke up. Can you type it into the chat? City you're in? I think we're going to have to give up there, Dale. Now let's try KD5LQD. Jimmy, did you want to check in on voice?
LQD.
Okay. You're in Dallas. Okay, next, let's see. J, KG5BZW. Did you want to check in on voice?
BZW. Neil Everett.
Okay, we got you, Jay. And then last but not least, Billy, KF5PBS. Do you want to check in on voice?
Chart 5, Papa Delta Sierra, Billy and Sherman on Echolink.
We have you, Billy. KF5PDS, Billy and Sherman. Okay, that runs out of the Echolink people that aren't on Echolink, or I don't have. Let me try refreshing the screen to make sure it's really updated. Hang on here. Nope, no other electronic check-ins do I notice. So do we have anybody wanting to check in via any mode to Skynet? If so, please come now with your call sign, your name, and your location. This is N5BB, Skynet Net Control. Nothing heard. And N5LIG, Dale, I see that you're in Louisville en route to Dallas. We've got you. Thank you very much. Okay. And Chaz is looking at the Oregon State University. They must be too well. Sure that's not a misprint, Chaz? Did I say Ohio? I meant Ohio. There's lots of OSUs. I know it's Ohio. Okay, do we have any other check-ins on RF? One more try. This is N5BB. This is Skynet.
This is Kilo Golf 5, Whiskey Victor Lima, James and Carrollton.
And I recognize KG5WVL, James. There's a lot of different OSUs, by the way, Chaz. Okay, next. Looks like we've checked everybody in so far. Now let's look at general announcements. So does anybody have any announcements? Could be amateur radio related, astronomy, space, or something of general interest to hams. If so, please come now with your call sign only.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike.
I recognize NT5TM. Go ahead, Tony.
Good evening, Bill. Just a few very brief announcements. Tonight's Afterglow movie is The Time Traveler from 1984. It's kind of a long one, and Skynet is more interesting anyway, but if you did see it, or even if you didn't, you're welcome to join us at 10:30 on this repeater, and we'll talk about it. This Monday at 7 p.m. marks our MCOM 101 net. This net is open to any ham interested in public service and emergency communications, whether or not they're part of any team, club, or organization. And finally, and most strangely, I just learned that a new 220 megahertz net has started up on Friday nights. It meets after the 8 p.m. North Texas Simplex net. Now, that's that famous 2-meter net on 145.58. Now, you'll have to listen to that net at least, because this new 220 net has no fixed start time. It's just going to start whenever the other net finishes. So either listen on 145.58 or listen on the frequency of the new net. Remember, it's a simplex net, 223.500. 223.500. Late on Friday nights, and see who you can hear and talk to. NT5TM, back to net.
Very good, Tony. Do we have any questions or comments about Tony's news items? Okay, thank you, Tony. Okay, any other news items of any type or announcements? If so, please come now. Okay. The AMSAT, Radio Amateur Satellite Group, has multiple nets available. There's a national AMSAT net on Echolink. There are 2 local nets. On Tuesday evenings, there's a net in Dallas. This net is on this repeater at 8 p.m. every Tuesday evening. Then on Wednesday, there is a similar net at 9 p.m. for satellite discussion on the Arlington 147.140 megahertz repeater. It also has a PL of 110.9, and oh boy, Tom has got an error in here. It says the PL tone is 110.9 megahertz. No, it's 110.9 hertz. Anyway, it's got a positive offset. So we have those 2 local satellite-related nets. Dallas Amateur Radio Club has got a bunch of nets on Monday evenings at 7 p.m. So you can check the w5fc.org website and know that this coming Monday it'll be the MCOM 101, Emergency Communications. There's something going on every week. So check W5SC website and you can see what's coming up the following week. I've been told that the CERT City Simulation Net on Friday night is on hiatus, and it's not meeting at this time. Does anybody have any corrections to that? Okay, I'm going to assume that's still correct. Saturday night is the night of nets. We have Tech Net starting at 7 p.m. We talk about questions and answers and all things related to amateur radio and a lot of news. Then Skynet, the net you're in right now, from 9 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. And then at 10:30 p.m. we have the Afterglow Movie Net. Tom, KE5ICX, would you like to read the description of the Afterglow Net tonight, the movie? This is N5BB.
Here we go. Glenn awoke on the Greek beach with nothing but his birthday suit. Well, that and a monolith which miraculously could inflate and be used as a flotation device. Glenn didn't remember a lot, but somehow he was more than a little creeped out that this monolith had spent the better part of a millennium staring at him in bed, playing classical music. Glenn also seemed to remember every time he got up for a bio break that he was 30 years older. Well, at least he was getting a decent night's sleep. Before Glenn could shuffle off the beach, a kind lady who had spent a lot of time in second-rate science fiction movies decided to befriend him and take him home to the rest of the acting family. Sorry, I couldn't come up with anything better. Join us for the time-traveling adventure and romance, The Time Traveler from 1984. And no, I do not know if the Time Traveler with Traveler is two L's or a single L, because it's both. So pick one. That's at 10:30 p.m. The reason why is because it's got Care Delay in it. He's the main actor. He was also in 2001. Oh well, if I have to explain the joke, I guess it doesn't work very well. Back to you, Bill, KE5ICX.
Yes, if you watch the movie, the Afterglow movie tonight, you'll think you'll be wanting to talk to HAL 9000. That's right. You want to talk to HAL. Okay. By the way, every evening at 6:30 p.m. local time, we have the National Traffic Systems Training Net, moving messages. These are like telegrams. Then at 9:30 p.m. every evening, we have the late session of the same net on the Irving WA5CKF repeater, which is at 146.72 megahertz, with the same PL tone, 110.9. So, again, you can join us at 10:30 p.m. after this net for the Afterglow, if you want to talk about that movie, or just listen about the movie of the meeting. Chaz, you want to tell us about the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas? KF5JHA, this is N5BB, Skynet in progress.
Thank you, Bill. Good evening, everyone. I'm a bit distracted tonight. I'm watching the Ohio State University play Western Michigan, and the score's really close, 49-0. So, Slide Master, slide number 1. The next Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas Club meeting will be held on Friday, September 27th, and the meeting will be held at 7:30 p.m. in person at the University of Texas at Dallas, and also held on Zoom. Let's see, Saturday night public observing sessions continue. Skynet was picked to be on Saturday night, so there could be an opportunity for live reports from the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas public observing sessions. On the first Saturday of the month, which is tonight, stargazing is held at Fairview. Is there anyone at Fairview that would like to make a report? Come now with your call sign if you'd like to make a report. I'm not surprised from my spy that's at the event. They're saying that there's over 100 people at Fairview looking through at least 10 or more telescopes. And there's actually a presentation going on. Yes, a PowerPoint presentation in the middle of the field. Isn't that amazing? Okay. All right, you can check the Texas Astronomical Society Dallas website at texasastro.org for up-to-date information and details about meetings and public observing sessions. If you didn't get a look at the crescent moon tonight, it should be clear enough tomorrow night to do the same thing. This is KF5JHA, back to our net control.
Well, thank you, Chaz. I want to thank Bob the Cat for not interfering with your transmissions. Okay, do we have any additional check-ins? This is N5BB Skynet. Over in Echolink, we got nothing. Okay, next, let's talk about the National Space Society. I happen to be the membership director and the member at large for the North Texas chapter of the National Space Society. If you have any questions about National Space Society, you can contact me at space@byram.net. That's SPACE at BYROM.net. Or you can find my amateur radio email address on QRZ. The National Space Society is a non-profit group based in the U.S. which is interested in the exploration and development of space and the creation of a spacefaring civilization. The North Texas chapter of the National Space Society is very active. We meet every month at 3:30 p.m. on the second Sunday afternoon of the month. The meeting location is Spring Creek Barbecue, which is on the southwest corner of Highway 183 and Beltline Road in Irving, across the highway from Irving Mall. On the last Friday evening of each month, from 6 to 8 p.m., the National Space Society North Texas chapter sponsors a social event called Space Rendezvous. Location is Cheddar's Restaurant, 700 West Highway 635 in Irving, 75063. Anyone is welcome to attend the Space Rendezvous event and discuss human activities in space with us. No membership in any group is required. Our local National Space Society chapter website is ntx.nss.org. That's NTX, abbreviation for North Texas, .NSS, abbreviation for National Space Society, .org. Our group also has an active Facebook page. Just search for National Space Society of North Texas in the Facebook search page. The next local National Space Society chapter meeting will be tomorrow, Sunday, September the 8th. It'll be at Spring Creek Barbecue in Irving. The meeting will start at 3:30. The presentation will start at 4 p.m. We will have a virtual presentation by NASA's headquarters scientist, Dr. Lindsay Hayes, concerning the latest updates to the Mars sample return plans. You know, NASA had a plan for the Mars sample return mission, but it was getting too expensive and too complex and out of control. They put that on hold, and they've opened it up for other groups to make proposals, and Dr. Hayes is going to tell us what the status of all that is. At least we hope she will. Okay, do we have any additional check-ins, questions, or comments? This is N5BB, Skynet. Next, let's look at recent astronomical discoveries. Brenda, WB5OZL, this is N5BB. Go right ahead.
OZL. The title of this article is reveals evidence for origin of supermassive black hole at galaxy's center. The origins of aptly named supermassive black holes, which can weigh in at more than 1 million times the mass of the Sun and reside in the center of most galaxies, remain one of the great mysteries of the cosmos. Now, researchers from the Nevada Center for Astrophysics at UNLV have discovered some compelling evidence suggesting that the supermassive black hole at the center of our Milky Way galaxy, known as Sagittarius A star, is likely the result of a past cosmic merger. The study, published September 6th in the journal Nature Astronomy, builds on recent observations from the Event Horizon Telescope, EHT, which captured the first direct image of Sagittarius A star in 2022. The EHT, the result of a global research collaboration, syncs data from 8 existing radio observatories worldwide to create a massive Earth-sized virtual telescope. UNLV astrophysicists Swan and Bing Zhang utilized the data from the EHT observation of Sagittarius A star to look for evidence of how it may have formed. Supermassive black holes are thought to grow either by the accretion of matter over time or by the merger of 2 existing black holes. The UNLV team investigated various growth models to understand the peculiar rapid spin and missile angular momentum. The team demonstrated that these unusual characteristics are best explained by a major merger event involving Sagittarius A star and another supermassive black hole, likely from a satellite galaxy. This discovery paves the way for our understanding of how supermassive black holes grow and evolve, said Wang, the lead author of the study and an NCFA postdoctoral fellow at UNLV. The misaligned high spin of Sagittarius A star indicates that it may have merged with another black hole, dramatically altering its amplitude and orientation of spin. Using sophisticated simulations, the researchers modeled the impact of a merger, considering various scenarios that align with the observed spin properties of Sagittarius A star. Their results indicate that a 4-to-1 mass ratio merger with a highly inclined orbital configuration could reproduce the spin properties observed by the EHT. This merger likely occurred around 9 billion years ago, following the Milky Way's merger with the Gaia Enceladus galaxy, says Zhang, a distinguished professor of physics and astronomy at UNLV and the founding director of the NCFA. This event not only provides evidence of the hierarchical black hole merger theory, but also provides insights into the dynamical history of our galaxy. Sagittarius A star sits at the center of the galaxy, more than 27,000 light years away from Earth, and sophisticated tools like the EHT provide direct imaging that helps scientists put predictive theories to the test. Researchers say that the findings from the study will have significant implications for future observations with upcoming spaceborne gravitational wave detectors, such as the Laser Interferometer Space Antenna, that's LISA, which is planned to launch in 2035 and is expected to detect similar supermassive black hole mergers across the universe. All right, this was from ScienceDaily.com. Back to net, this is WB5OZL.
Thank you very much, Brenda. This is Inside BB. Chaz must be very, very happy. He's reporting that the score is The Ohio State University 56, Western Michigan 0. Sure looks like a typo, Chaz. Okay. This is Inside BB Skynet. Do we have any check-ins or comments? Okay, this is Inside BB, Skynet Net Control. Next, we have the discussion topic of the evening by the Net Control Station. I'm going to discuss the Boeing Starliner. Boeing Starliner's future is unclear, even after the safe landing last night. So there are several companies that NASA's contracted with to build capsules that can safely handle astronauts in Earth orbit and maybe even to the moon or Mars. And one of them is Boeing. Their capsule is called the Starliner. The Starliner consists of a crew capsule and which is reusable, and it is below the crew capsule there is a service module which has various things in it, mainly some thrusters that allow it to do things like drop out of orbit and move toward the International Space Station and things like that. And I think there's power and other things. And attached to the bottom of that, there are solar arrays. So there's various things attached to the bottom of the reusable. There's also a heat shield and some things like that. The crew module has the reentry parachutes inside it, and like I said, the heat shield on the bottom of it. So so NASA sent up to the International Space Station their first module with humans in it going into space. This is N5B. N5BB, Skynet, the first Starliner. And unfortunately, they had some difficulties. The difficulty was they successfully got to the International Space Station and docked. That all went fine. But they had some difficulties with some of the thrusters. And after some investigations, NASA and Boeing determined that the main problem, they believe, is that there is the engines are getting hot, expanding a Teflon gasket, I guess, and that is restricting the fuel. So the engine then doesn't have enough fuel and it stops. That seems to be the major difficulty, although there may be some other problems with other things on the capsule, but that's the biggest one right now they know about. And after they tested these, both on ground and in orbit, NASA didn't figure, and they had a good enough answers for exactly how safe those engines would be, because they have to work well enough to reorient the capsule to to get the humans to go back to Earth. So the 2 astronauts that were sent up to the International Space Station are going to remain there until early next year, and they're going to return on a SpaceX capsule, a Dragon capsule. So this is complicated because they're going to have to get some different spacesuits to them, et cetera, et cetera. But NASA will make it work. So you might say, what happened to that capsule that was sent up there that they're not going to bring humans back in? Well, last night, that capsule came back to Earth. And just so you kind of understand this process, I was watching it live on the NASA feed, and I got a list here of the timeline. So here's what happened. This is all Central Time, our local time here last evening. This is N5BB Skynet. At 5:04 p.m., the Starliner undocked from the ISS. What they do is they essentially they disconnect a hold-down system, and there's some springs, and the springs initially actually push the Starliner away from the ISS. They then did some burns of some very small, multiple burns of some small rockets to move the Starliner further away from the ISS into another orbit, slightly different orbit, so it was safe to do a deorbit burn at a later time. So at 10:17 p.m. local time, Central Time last night, the Starliner did a 59-second deorbit burn. This is from the support module, which is mounted below it, the service module. It's got the rockets on it that do this. So there's some pretty big rockets on it, and they did a 59-second deorbit burn. I believe those rockets have about 6,000 pounds of thrust. So the deorbit burn started to get the capsule on a trajectory to come into the Earth's atmosphere. That was at 10:17 p.m. 3 minutes later, at 10:20 p.m., the service module that had those rockets in it separated from the crew module. And that service module came back and burned up in the Earth's atmosphere. So that was at 10:20 p.m. The crew capsule was then reoriented. It has some thrusters on it that can reorbit it, that can readjust its orientation. It was properly reoriented, and it came down slowly into the atmosphere. 25 minutes later, at 10:45 p.m., 25 minutes after separation of the crew module, was the entry to the atmosphere, what they call is the atmospheric entry interface, where it starts to get hot and significant atmospheric buffeting. 3 minutes later, 10:48 p.m., there was a start of about a 4.5-minute plasma blackout. The same things happened on Apollo missions coming back to the Earth. There is a plasma generated by the atmosphere getting extremely hot and generating, the electrons get stripped off, and that hot plasma blocks radio communications. So the plasma blackout started 54 miles above the Earth's surface at 10:48 p.m. About 4.5 minutes later, at 10:52 p.m., the blackout period ended, and the capsule was now 32.9 miles high, a lot lower. 4 minutes later, at 10:56 p.m., a lot of things started happening. The forward heat shield jettisoned. The forward heat shield is kind of at the top of the capsule, the small part of it, and the forward heat shield protects the parachutes. So they ejected the forward heat shield, And within the next minute, they deployed the 2 drogue chutes. These are the high-speed small chutes that come out to start slowing it down. And a minute later, at 10:57, the drogue chutes then pulled out the 3 main chutes, the large chutes. So then, a minute later, at 10:58 p.m., something they call the rotational handle deployed. I've read about the rotational handle. They know what it looks like. It's something which orients the capsule correctly for landing. That's all I know. It's, I guess it's a drag thing. They call it the rotational handle. Neat name. So this is at 10:58 p.m. The rotational handle came out, and that within a minute, the back heat shield was jettisoned. This is the main heat shield that ablates so the capsule won't burn up. And within another minute, the airbag inflated. The Starliner capsule lands on a bunch of airbags. Kind of neat. So at 10:58 p.m., the airbag inflated. And 3 minutes later, at 11:01 p.m., the Starliner landed at White Sands Space Harbor. So the time between the deorbit burn and the landing was 44 minutes. And from the entry into the atmosphere until landing was only about 15 minutes. So it's coming down pretty fast. So the Starliner came in over the Baja Peninsula, south of California, going northeast, and it came down and landed right on target at the White Sands Space Harbor. This is N5BB. So one reason I'm glad to be talking about this is I've been there. I've been to that area near where it landed for work. I made a number of trips right past the White Sands Space Harbor main location where NASA had buildings. They had fire trucks there and various other buildings and things. And it was at the end, the southern end of their big, long landing strip where the space shuttle landed one time. And up near that landing strip is where the Starliner landed. There's a 4-kilometer diameter landing zone circle. And the Starliner capsule has strobe lights on it. They activated during the descent. And then they could find it once it hit the ground because of the strobe lights. This is N5BB Skynet. During the landing, after the parachutes had come out, there are a lot of pictures from the NASA airplane and from a Cessna, small Cessna airplane. So the NASA airplane was very high. It was at, I think, 40 or 50 miles, and the Cessna was much lower. I think it was only around 6,000 feet or something. So for a while, you could see pictures taken from above and pictures taken from below of it coming in with the parachutes deployed. It was very neat on the NASA feed. After it landed, they had a convoy of vehicles that went out. The first people that came out to the capsule were what they call the Gold Team. They're all suited up, and they ground the spacecraft since it could have picked up a static charge, and they verified that there's no hazards, so they have chemical sensors, etc. You want to make sure it's safe. So after it's safe, then various recovery vehicles come, and there's a crew that opens up the hatch, and of course there's no humans inside this time, but they were getting things that they had put. There was some cargo that they were sending back down. This is N5BB Skynet, net control. So, the return to Earth was not without issues. So there were some issues. Although they did land right on target, and they did land okay. Steve Stitch the NASA Commercial Crew Program Manager, said at a post-landing briefing, during a 58-second deorbit burn, 2 of the thrusters got hotter than expected, but did not fail. They purposely changed the software to keep it from turning off the thrusters that got too hot. They wanted to make sure that they, were okay. They wouldn't turn off prematurely. But they don't really know if the thrusters reach a temperature that would have triggered a shutdown without the software change. So in test before reentry, in other words, after they separated the crew module from the ISS, they were checking some of the thrusters. One of the 12 separate thrusters on the crew module did not work in those tests. Those thrusters are a different design from those on the service module. And it wasn't clear why it failed. There was a redundant thruster, though, and it did operate normally. So there were no problems during reentry. It was a bullseye landing, he said, despite a glitch with the navigation computer system that had a problem acquiring the GPS signals after emerging from the plasma reentry communication blackout. So 3 months ago, this is N5BB, Skynet, 3 months ago, when the Starliner was going to the International Space Station, 5 of the 28 RCS thrusters on the service module failed during the rendezvous. Subsequent investigation showed overheating could cause Teflon seals and a poppet valve to swell, restricting the flow of propellant to the thrusters. Engineered recovered 4 of the 5 thrusters. In other words, they got them to work again after they temporarily stopped working. But they couldn't get the 5th one to work. And NASA officials couldn't be sure the thrusters would not overheat again on the trip home. NASA decided it was too risky for Starliner to come home with the astronauts, Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, who were launched up there on June the 5th. So they were the first people to fly on the commercial capsule. They'll remain on the capsule, in the station, ISS, until February, when they'll return to Earth on a SpaceX Dragon spacecraft. Okay, there's lots more details, but I think that's enough. So the whole point here is that NASA knows some of what, and Boeing knows some of what happened, but not all. And not all of the engine failures seem to be of the same engine. There were 2 different engines that had some failures. But the good news was they were able to get the crew module down safely with no people in it. But they have to have a lot of these thrusters working because they have to rotate the capsule to get the right orientation at different points. So it's really critical that they be able to reorient the crew module. And so I think everybody believes this is a really good idea for them to delay the astronauts from coming back. Okay. Again, the airbags were pretty cool. And you can see pictures of the satellites, the capsules sitting on the ground on top of the airbags. They seem to remain inflated after it lands. Really cool. Okay, that's all I have. Do we have any questions, comments, or additional check-ins? This is N5BB, Skynet, Net Control. Okay, nothing additional on Echolink. No check-ins, I mean. And I've got one additional check-in on the web form. Brian, KD5IFS, is listening online on YouTube. Very good, Brian. I'm not looking at the YouTube feed. Hopefully Tom showed all those neat pictures I had showing the parachutes and showing the schematic drawings of the spacecraft and other pictures of it at various points and the pictures after it landed. Okay, one more try. Do we have any additional check-ins? This is N5BB, Skynet. Okay, there's some news here on Echolink. In 2 weeks, Chaz volunteer in 2 weeks from now to read Chaz's sections. Kelly, K5KTX, will also be out of town that same weekend. Looking at my calendar, which is hiding from me, just a moment. Let me pull my calendar back up. 2 weeks from now will be the date of the Texas QSO party. September the 21st, Saturday. So here on the radio, do we have any volunteers to help with reading some sections of the script, in particular the ones that Chaz gives, on September the 21st in 2 weeks? Do we have any volunteers? If so, please come now, N5BB. Well, I can see, rather than all holding your hands up, you're running for the door to escape before you get volunteered. Well, we'll figure out something. I can help if nothing else. Okay, next we have Chaz again. Chaz, what's up? This is N5BB, Skynet.
Thank you, Bill. Good evening, everyone. Slide Master, slide number 2, please. Yes, this is Chaz, KF5JHA. And we call this segment of Skynet What's Up because it's all about what's going on astronomically over the next couple of weeks and beyond. Slide Master, slide number 3. Today, September the 7th, I was able to take this picture, if you're looking at the video version of Skynet, of the sun using the provided solar filter with my ZWO C-Star. The large sunspot complexes on the sun are so large that at times you can just use your solar eclipse glasses to see them. I tried it this afternoon. They weren't quite large enough, but they have been a lot larger over the last several weeks. The sun is near its 11-year solar maximum. Now, we've talked about the solar cycle on past Skynets, and probably we'll have a segment on that again sometime soon. Slide Master, slide number 4. We've talked about the predictable or predicted nova of the star T Corona Borealis, which may erupt at any time over the next month or two. It is currently at a brightness of around 10th magnitude, which is much too faint for us to see with just our 2 eyes. But when it does go nova, T Corona Borealis could become as bright as the North Star. What's amazing is I can see the North Star with just my eyes from a very bright, light-polluted location in Mesquite, Texas. Slide Master, slide number 5. On September the 2nd, the moon was new. So the current phase of the moon is a waxing crescent. On September the 11th, the moon is at its first quarter phase. On September 17th, the moon will be full, and there's a partial lunar eclipse. More about the partial lunar eclipse in a few minutes. On September 18th, the moon is at perigee, which is a point in the moon's orbit that is closest to the Earth at a distance of 357,286 kilometers. On September 24th, the moon phase is third quarter. New moon is on October the 2nd. Also on October the 2nd, the moon is at apogee, which is the point in the moon's orbit that is furthest from the Earth at a distance of 406,516 kilometers. Slide Master, slide number 6, please. On the night of September the 8th and 9th, that's tomorrow night, the peak of the September Epsilon Perseid meteor shower will give us about half a dozen meteors per hour. You should always see the most meteors the hour before dawn, just because that's the side of the Earth that's running into the debris. If you want more information about meteors and meteor showers, you can visit the International Meteor Organization at imo.net or the American Meteor Society at amsmeteors.org. Slide Master, slide number 7. On September the 9th, there's a conjunction of Mercury and the bright star Regulus that happens in the northeastern morning sky. Slide Master, slide number 8. On September the 12th, there's a conjunction of the moon and the minor planet Sirius in the southern evening sky. Yes, in the evening sky. The moon is in the evening sky right now and will be there for the next 10 days or so. Slide Master, slide number 9. On September the 15th in the eastern early morning sky, in very strong twilight, you'll see the conjunction of Mercury and the minor planet Vesta. You'll need to use a pair of binoculars to observe Vesta. You might even need the binoculars to see Mercury. Slide Master, slide number 10. Early in the morning of September 17th, there's an occultation of Saturn by the moon. The disappearance of Saturn will happen at 6:23 and 36 seconds Central Daylight Time, very low in the western morning sky. The reappearance won't be visible to North Texas because the moon and Saturn will shortly set after the occultation begins. Slide Master, slide number 11. In the twilight of the western evening sky on September 17th is the conjunction of Venus and the bright star Spica. Slide Master, slide number 12. Okay, this is something that all you need is a clear sky and your two eyeballs and you should be able to see it. A lunar eclipse occurs when the moon moves into the shadow of the Earth. Most of the time the moon just moves just above or below the Earth's shadow as it orbits. But a couple times a year the moon travels into the Earth's shadow. There's a lighter part of the Earth's shadow called the penumbra and a darker part of the Earth's shadow called the umbra. When the moon moves completely into the umbra shadow of the Earth, we have what's called a total lunar eclipse. When the moon moves just part way into the Earth's shadow, we have a partial lunar eclipse. The eclipse on September 17th is a partial lunar eclipse. The last lunar eclipse visible in Dallas was on March 24th, just earlier this year. The next total lunar eclipse will be visible from Dallas right here on the night of March 13th and 14th, 2025. All right, the circumstances for the eclipse on September 17th is as follows. The moon will enter the penumbra, the lighter part of the Earth's shadow, at 7:41 p.m. Central Daylight Time. It'll be difficult to notice. The moon enters the umbra at 9:12 p.m. Central Daylight Time. The eclipse becomes visible at that point. The middle of the eclipse, at about 9:45 p.m. Central Daylight Time, is when about 9% of the moon is inside the umbra. The moon leaves the umbra at 10:15 p.m. Central Daylight Time, and the moon leaves the penumbra and the eclipse ends at 11:47 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And this is KF5JJ, and this is Skynet. Slide Master, slide number 13. Now, do any of you out there in Radio Land have a question or need a bill on any of the information? Or maybe you just have a general astronomy question. Come now with your call sign if you need a bill or have a question. I like to wait for a while because our friends over on Echolink are delayed a little bit when they do a transmission. So, as the moon waned last week, so do these words for this segment of Skynet. Stay safe, keep well, pray for the world. It's the only one where humans live right now, and until next time, actually I may be doing another segment on Skynet in a few minutes. Keep looking up So you know what's up, and this is KF5JHA. Back to N5BB, our net control.
Very good, Chad. This is N5BB. Getting ready to come up with the space exploration and space history in just a moment. Before that, I might comment, talking about what's going on outside. My Apple Watch, which seems to think it's smarter than I am, says it's supposed to be 61 degrees Fahrenheit at 7 a.m. in the morning. Oh boy, I think we're moving to a new season. Do we have any additional check-ins? If so, please come down. Okay, Kelly, K5KTX. What's going on with space history?
Bill, this is K5KTX. Tom, if you can skip my first two slides and move right into space history, which this week, beginning with September 1st, 1979, a human-made probe flew by Saturn for the first time. Pioneer 11, the predecessor of Pioneer 10, were the first craft to explore the outer solar system. After Pioneer 10's successful flyby of Jupiter, Pioneer 11's path was adjusted so that its path by Jupiter would send it on to Saturn. The team at NASA Ames Research Center originally planned to fly Pioneer 11 through Saturn's inner rings. However, with the twin Voyager spacecraft not far behind, it was decided that Pioneer 11 should be the trailblazer for their path through the outer ring system of Saturn. So Pioneer 11 only came within 21,000 kilometers of Saturn's upper atmosphere on September 1st, 1979. During the flyby, Pioneer 11 revealed a new ring, the F ring, discovered two new moons, charted the Saturn magnetic field, and mapped the general structure of the interior of the giant planet. Heading out of the solar system after the Saturn flyby, Pioneer 11 remained in contact until September 1995, and now continues a silent journey toward interstellar space. On September 3rd, 1976, the Viking 2 lander set down safely on Mars in Utopia Planitia. Viking 1 had landed on Chrysa Planitia, some 7,400 kilometers away, on July the 20th. The Viking 2 mission was part of the American Viking program to Mars and consisted of an orbiter and a lander, essentially identical to that of the Viking 1 mission. The craft was launched on September 9th, 1975. Following launch using a Titan Centaur launch vehicle and a 333-day cruise to Mars, the Viking 2 orbiter began returning global images of Mars prior to orbit insertion. The orbiter was inserted into Mars orbit on August 7, 1976. The orbiter then began taking photographs of candidate landing sites, which were used to select the final landing site. Viking 2 was operational on Mars for 1,281 sols, or 1,316 Earth days, or 3 years, 221 days, and was turned off on April 12, 1980, when its batteries failed. September 5th, 1977, at 8:56 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Voyager 1 lifted off from Launch Complex 41 at Cape Canaveral, Florida. Voyager 1 would fly by Jupiter in March 1979 and Saturn in November 1980. Voyager 1 is now in interstellar space, so far away that radio signals take almost 23 hours to reach Earth. It is currently 15.3 billion miles from Earth and traveling at over 38,000 miles per hour. Engineers expect the spacecraft to continue operating at least one science instrument until around 2025. After 2036, it will be out of the Deep Space Network. September 6, 1996, NASA's Galileo spacecraft conducted its second flyby of Ganymede, Jupiter's largest moon. The Galileo spacecraft mission, which first launched in 1989, was to study the moons of Jupiter and derived its name from Galileo Galilei. Ganymede is one of our 4 Galilean moons because it was one of the 4 moons first observed by Galileo in 1609 to 1610. Through Galileo's telescopes, Ganymede appeared as a small moving point which could easily be mistaken as a star, but the Galileo spacecraft, with its many scientific instruments and cameras, revealed Ganymede to be an entire world complete with its own magnetosphere and even a subsurface ocean. Also on September the 6th, 2013, the Lunar Atmosphere and Dust Environment Explorer, or LADEE probe, was launched from Pad OB of the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport at NASA's Wallops Flight Facility, Wallops Island, Virginia. It was the first payload to launch on the U.S. Air Force Minotaur 5 rocket, integrated by Orbital Sciences Corp., and the first deep space mission to launch from NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center's Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia. LADEE was a robotic mission that orbited to gather detailed information about the structure and composition of the thin lunar atmosphere and determine whether dust is lofted into the lunar sky. The probe orbited the moon for 7 months, and at the end of the mission was intentionally crashed into the far side of the moon on April 18, 2014. On September the 7th, back in 1914, American astrophysicist James Van Allen was born. Van Allen was a pioneer in early space exploration. For the International Geophysical Year, IGY, of 1957 to 8, he proposed several ideas for experiments conducted by satellites. The IGY was an international collaborative project designed to promote progress in the geophysical sciences, during which both American and Soviet scientists developed proposals for satellites. Unfortunately, Van Allen's proposals were initially ignored by the U.S. After the launch of Sputnik, however, Van Allen's proposals to launch an American satellite were quickly approved, and Explorer 1, the first U.S. satellite, was launched in January 1958, just 4 months after the launch of Sputnik. Thanks to data collected by Explorer 1 and later Explorer 3, scientists were able to confirm the existence of a zone of radiation held by the Earth's magnetic field, which were then named the Van Allen belts. By the way, that massive solar storm from May 2024 didn't just bring us incredible auroras, it created a brand new temporary Van Allen radiation belt. NASA's CubeSat discovered this new belt sandwiched between the inner and outer Van Allen belts, and it could stick around for months or even years. Now, in astronaut birthdays for this past week, starting September 1st, 1961, Christopher Ferguson, who was part of Space Shuttle missions STS-115, 136, and 135. He was also the original pilot for Starliner, but stepped down a few years ago. September 2nd, 1948, Krista McAuliffe, who was on the ill-fated Challenger mission STS-51L. She was the first teacher in space. September 3rd, 1944, Sherwood Spring, who was on Space Shuttle mission STS-61B. September 6th, 1946, Brian O'Connor, Space Shuttle mission STS-61B and STS-40. Also on September 6th, 1955, Carl Walsh, Space Shuttle missions STS-51, 65, 79, 108, Expedition 4 on the International Space Station, and Space Shuttle mission STS-111. And September the 7th, 1939, David Griggs, who was on Space Shuttle mission STS-51D. And that's all I've got this evening. Back to you. This is K5 KTX.
Very good, Kelly. Thank you very much. I do not see any additional Echolink or online check-ins. Do we have any people that like to check in on RF? If so, please come now. This is N5BB, Skynet. nothing heard. Now it's time for Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week with jokes by Chaz, KF5JHA. Take it away, Chaz. This is N5BB Skynet.
Thank you, Bill. Good evening once again. Slide Master, slide number 11. Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week is named in honor of Silent Key Carolyn, KC50ZT. Carolyn contributed to Skynet each week, almost from its beginning in 2012 till May of 2019, with a detailed look at one particular constellation each week. Since there are about 52 easily visible constellations seen in Texas throughout the year, out of the 88 total number of constellations, so Miss Carolyn covered the entire sky to that tradition of a constellation per week and named this segment after her. Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week this week is Cygnus the Swan. Slide Master, slide number 16. Cygnus is the constellation of the Swan, yes, since it is not hard to use the stars of Cygnus to trace out the basic shape of a swan flying along the Milky Way. It's sort of flying southward. It's not surprising to learn that Cygnus has been visualized as a swan by different cultures in the past. In one myth, Cygnus is swan whose form Zeus adopted in order to seduce Queen Livia of Sparta. In another, Orpheus, the father of song, was transformed into a swan after he was murdered. Cygnus is one of the three constellations that are involved in the well-known asterism of the Summer Triangle. Cygnus's brightest star, Deneb, forming one of the three stars in the corners of the triangle. The other two stars are Vega and Lyra, and Altair and Aquila. And they're right overhead right now. It's clear outside right now. After Skynet, go outside and look straight up, and you'll find those three stars. The brightest stars in Cygnus form another well-known asterism known as the Northern Cross. Slide Master, slide number 17. A very important part of Skynet, the jokes of the week. Okay, usually they're related to the constellation, so how do you get down off of an elephant? Well, you don't, but you can get down off of a swan. Think about it. A guy said, I am great at identifying birds. His friend said, okay, what are those on that tree? The guy said, yep, they're all birds. That's for Kelly. She's a bird person. I think she has over 400 different types of birds in her lifetime list, yes. Did you hear the Pope caught the bird flu? Yep, he caught it from a cardinal. If you don't get these, I don't know if I want to explain them. I love the sound of a swan making this morning. So I tweet it. It doesn't work because tweeting is really X now, isn't it? Yeah. What's the difference between the bird flu and swine flu? And the swan flu? Oh. For bird flu, you need tweetment. The swine flu, you need ointment. And the swan flu, you need to stick your neck out and wing it. Okay, here's the final one. Why do swans make bad basketball players? Because they're always committing fouls. You know, birds are called foul. Get me out of this. Slide Master, slide number 18, please. Deneb, Alpha Cygni, is the brightest star in the constellation of Cygnus the Swan. The name Deneb is derived from the Arabic word which means tail, owing it to the position of the tail of the swan. Deneb is also the head or the top of the Deneb is top or the head of the Northern Cross, and as such has been referred to as the Star of the Cross, according to Burnham's Celestial Handbook. Deneb is a blue-white supergiant star, one of the greatest supergiant stars known, shining brightly at magnitude 1.3 as seen from the Earth, despite its distance of about 1,700 light years away. Wow. Slide Master, slide number 19. Alberio is also known as Beta Cygni. is a beautiful third magnitude double star. Alberio is considered to be one of the most beautiful double stars in the sky due to the contrasting colors of its two members. The primary is yellow, and fifth magnitude companion is blue or bluish green. These two colors make an easy notice color contrast. As such, Alberio is a great demonstration object for showing newcomers to astronomy that stars come in different colors and that they are not all just white. I'll bet they're seeing or looking at it through telescopes up at Fairview right now. Another trait that makes Alberio a good introductory object is the fact that it's easily split by any telescope. In fact, it can be split with binoculars if they are held very steady and are mounted on a tripod, which is why they are a candidate for the Astronomical League Binocular Double Star Club. Alberio is about 410 light years away, and since both stars share about the same proper motion, it is believed they are a true physical pair. Slide master, slide number 20. This one is Cygnus X1, is the first black hole to be scientifically identified by astronomers. It is part of a binary system with a black hole and a blue supergiant star known as HD 226868 orbiting around each other. Of course, the black hole itself cannot be observed with backyard telescopes, but HD 226868 has a visual magnitude of 8.95, so it's easily visible in virtually all amateur instruments. It lies about half a degree from the fourth magnitude Eta Cygni star. And this is KF5, JHA, and this is Skynet. Slide master, slide number 21. New General Catalog 7000, also NGC 7000, is known as the North American Nebula and located near Deneb. The North American Nebula can be seen with the naked eye as a bright spot in the Milky Way from a dark sky side, if you know exactly where to look. Using a nebula filter held in front of the eye makes this easier. Yep, just the nebula filter held up to your eyeball. Binoculars or low-power wide-field telescopes are best for observing NGC 7000. In fact, it is generally agreed that smaller, short-focus telescopes like a 3 or 4-inch telescope are the best. It can be seen in a 10-inch diode, but even at the lowest power, you can't see it all in the same field of view. Slide master, slide number 22. IC 5070 is better known as the Pelican Nebula. It's located right next to NGC 7000 out in the Atlantic Ocean. Yeah, because it's the North American Nebula, this is out in the Atlantic Ocean, which is appropriate for the place for pelicans. It and NGC 7000 are believed to be two parts of the same gas cloud. It's only an intervening dark cloud that makes them look like two separate nebulae, which, like the Great Nebula of Orion, M42, and its nearby neighbor, M43, appear to be separated by a nebula, but they're actually a single cloud split by an intervening dark cloud. Slide master, slide number 23, please. Messier object number 29. M29 is an open cluster of stars that does not stand out distinctly from the Milky Way background, but it might if it were not intervening dust clouds. The particular area of the Milky Way where M29 is located is heavily obscured with dust, dimming the stars of M29 by at least 3 magnitudes. M29 would be a very striking object if it could be seen without the intervening dust clouds. I actually observed just the other night. Slide master, slide number 24. M39 is an open cluster as well. It's visible to the naked eye from dark sky sites. David Hutchinson notes that he saw it without optical aid. Stephen James O'Meara also notes that it is visible to the naked eye, appearing as a small fuzzy patch about 9 degrees east-northeast of Deneb. Being a naked eye object, M39 makes for a wonderful binocular object, but in a telescope it requires low power to see all of the cluster members at once. Slide master, slide number 25, please. NGC 6826 is the blinking nebula or the blinking planetary, and it looks exactly the way that Dave Hutchinson describes it in his article on the Task Spectrum newsletter. The reason that the nebula appears to blink is because the central star overwhelms the eye. So if you look at it quickly, you just see the star, but if you let the eye look at the entire view through the eyepiece, you see nebulosity around the corner of your eye. You look at the star again, and then the nebulosity is gone. In other words, using averted vision on this object works. It's the best way to see it. Keep switching between averted vision and direct vision, and you'll see the nebula blink. Slide master, slide number 26. NGC 6960, NGC 6974, NGC 6992 is the Veil Nebula, and discovered by William Herschel in 1784 with an 18-inch telescope. Robert Burnham Jr. wrote that in Burnham's Celestial Handbook that many observers have seen the bright portions of the veil in 7x50 binoculars. In 7x50s, it is faint but unmistakable. Stephen James Amir confirms this. You can see much more of it with a 10-inch knob without a filter. It resembles a faint cirrus cloud that are fairly featureless. Therefore, an O3 filter is a must-have tool for viewing the Veil Nebula. The Western Veil, NGC 6960, isn't easily found because it appears to touch the foreground star 52 Cygni, which is a magnitude 4.2 magnitude star. It is a naked eye object and easily visible in a finder. Slide master, slide number 27. There's a few more Astronomical League observing program objects in the constellation of Cygnus. I've just given you a sampling of some of those objects. The Astronomical League has at last count 74 different observing programs, most of which have about 100 objects. So if you observe just 10 different objects in an observing program each month, then you can earn an observing certificate in about a year. Slide master, slide number 28, and that is Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week, Cygnus the Swan. I want to thank my friends Dave Hutchinson and Dennis Harwell for the research and words on deep sky objects that I use, borrow, and steal for every Skynet. I also at times use the website constellation-guide.com for information. Now next week we'll take a look at Delphinus the Dolphin and Equilus the Horse. This is KF5, JHA saying good night, 73, and back to our net control, Bill, N5BB. Oh, and Bob the Cat says good night too.
Very good, Chaz. This is N5BB, net control for Skynet. Do we have any questions, comments, or late check-ins? Tom, K5ICX, we've only got a couple of minutes. Anything exciting you'd like to bring in for the space launches of the week? N5BB.
Yeah, I can give you just one here. We'll do the certification flight for the Vulcan. Flight 2, this will be coming up. We're not sure exactly when. It'll be the second flight of Launch Alliance's Vulcan rocket. With a collection of payloads, ULA changed this mission when it became clear that the original payload, the Sierra Space Dream Chaser cargo ship, would not be ready for launch. This second test flight is needed to gain certification from the U.S. military to fly national security payloads. And that's it, Bill. That's about all the time we got. Back to you, KE5I6.
W5FT.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Tom. It's a little hard for me to add all these things up, but I think we had around 27 participants this evening. I've got these multiple lists. I'd like to thank everybody for participating tonight. I'd like to remind everybody that
operational and all my circuits are functioning
coming up in a few minutes.
Afterglow Movie Net.
We hope you join us here next week and every Saturday night at 9 p.m. to discuss astronomy, space, and space exploration. On this net, the sky is never the limit. We're looking for new net control stations for this and other nets. And as we mentioned earlier, in 2 weeks, somebody needs to read Chaz's items, and Kelly won't be there. So if you want to help with any of that, please let us know. Does anybody want to volunteer to participate in 2 weeks to read some of Chaz or Kelly's items? This is Inside BB. Yeah, it's hard to get volunteers. If you'd like to try your hand at being a net control, send an email to nets@w5fc.org. You can follow topics and discussion about this net, astronomy in general, on Facebook and X. Look at w5fc.org, and you'll find all kinds of links. So until next Saturday night, I'll be closing this net at 10:31 p.m. local time. We're turning it the repeater for normal amateur radio use for a couple of minutes before afterglow. 73, everybody. Tom, you want to discuss the Afterglow movie and when we'll start that up? This is N5BB closing Skynet. Good evening.
Yeah, Bill, thanks for doing the net this evening. We'll be doing the Afterglow Movie Net in 5 minutes, so go powder your nose, pop some popcorn. That's what I usually do. And then come on back in about 5 minutes. See you then, KE5ICX.
I missed the net, WV9CSP.
All right, it's been about 5 minutes, so it's time for the Afterglow Movie Net. And this is KE5ICX. I've been at control, at least this week. Tonight's movie has actually two titles. One is called The Time Traveler, singular, The Time Traveler. There is a film called The Time Travelers, plural, which came out in 1964. We actually watched that movie twice and discussed it through the years. This one's different. It's called also has an alternate title called The Next One, and came out in 1981. So you could find the movie either way. It was available for free on, I think it was Tubi. You can still see it if you'd like. I tried to find a wiki on this to see, give you a synopsis, but the only thing I could really find was a review. So I'm going to read a little bit about the review, which includes a description of what's going on and some comments about the movie along the way. You may agree or not. This is done by Kevin Lyons, and it was fairly recent, February 1st, 2024. So there you have it. Here we go. It says here's an oddity, though not necessarily a good one, a science fiction art film for the man who brought you the video nasty Island of Death from 1976 and the tech thriller Blind Date from 1984. Nico Mastrorakis was back in his native Greece for this odd parable about a mysterious man who may be a new messiah, or alternatively an amnesiac child murderer washed up on the cliffs of the picturesque Mykonos Island. Said stranger is played by Keir Dullea as an almost anomalistic blank, unidentified save for the strange serial number stenciled on his body. He's found by Tim, played by Jeremy Leck, recently the reality-twisting Anthony in It's a Good Life section of Twilight Zone, the movie from 1983. Yes, he's still a kid. He's grown up now and actually is in this movie called Seat 23B, which I kind of like to see. It looks interesting. The son of Andrea Barbeau. I didn't know that, but I guess so. Oh, that's the son of Andrea. That's the name of the character. The American widow of an astronaut who has retreated to the islands to help her grieve. Andrea, with alarming and inexplicable speed, decides to take the mystery man in, Tim giving him the name Glenn. Before she embarks on an affair with him, she has some doubts about him, though, as she might, briefly suspecting that he's an aforementioned child killer. But the truth about Glenn is altogether stranger, however. While being examined by the local doctor, Barnaby, played by Peter Hobbs, he's found to have two hearts. A Time Lord, maybe? The organ's kicking up a funky, syncopated beat. He claims to recognize the face of Christ from an icon on a church wall, brings Tim back to life after he's killed in an accident, and claims to be from another dimension, though the film's alternative title, The Time Traveler, suggests something different, a Time Lord. Religious symbolism runs riot throughout, and Mastrorakis, never a particularly subtle director, lays it on with a trowel. Glenn is imprisoned on Good Friday for a crime he didn't commit, for example, but the script doesn't really know what to do with him once he's been introduced to the story. His powers and abilities are contradictory. He can swim early in the film, but later can't when he seems to save some of the kids, and seems reluctant or unable to revive them after they've drowned, despite having saved Tim earlier. He talks in riddles and seems unwilling to explore the world beyond the shoreline. And that's all there is to him by the time he walks back into the sea again in this silly and hard-to-fathom ending, only to reappear again sometime later as at another beach, the eponymous Next One, again with his memory wiped. We still have no real idea who he is. An alien, a time traveler, a messiah, all of the above? His relationship with Andrea is an odd one. She seems remarkably equipped to fall in his inexplicable charms. Barbeau later confessed that her main reason for taking the job was she fancied a few weeks in Greece, and it's fairly by-the-numbers performance from her, suggesting she was just as baffled by what was going on as everyone else. Leeks was given even less to work with. Tim's personality expressed entirely and occasionally mentioned but too often forgotten mourning for his dad, and for being a science fiction fan. There's an Empire Strikes Back poster on his bedroom wall as he gets given a Darth Vader mask. That's all we know about him. The slovenly pace seems to be mistaking a lack for speed, depth, and weight. Not an uncommon misapprehension, allows the director to explore the gorgeous locations. He's served very well by his director of photography, Eris Sarvol. At any rate, but the local color, no matter how beautifully it's shot, is simply no substitute for an actual story, one that reveals more of itself than the one is cooked up here. Is less well served by the usually reliable Stanley Myers, who scores a mix of cliched bouzouki cues and appalling sappy songs. The title song was apparently something of a hit in Greece, as it was terrible, by the way. Although not released until '84, the next one has been shot as early as spring of '81, which raises an interesting thing about it. At that time, Barbeau had not long been married to John Carpenter. They had tied the knot New Year's Day in '79. In '84, Carpenter would release vastly superior Starman, a film about a young widow who meets an unearthly stranger who can restore the dead to life and begins an affair with him. It should have been entirely wrong to suggest that Carpenter, or more pertinently, his writers, Bruce A. Evans and Ray Gideon, had taken anything from this film. The original script for Starman dated back to at least 1979. But the coincidence is noteworthy. And that's all for this strange, enigmatic film. Really has to pique the interest. In a way, it's a fascinating film, but it doesn't do very much with any of the big ideas, seemingly hoping that a bit of willful obfuscation will carry the day. It doesn't, which gives a whiff of pretentiousness, which is a shame, as there's a lot going on here which, properly developed, could have resulted in quite a film. Instead, we have is sadly more interesting for its ambitions than it actually what it achieves. It's a mystery without a resolution. We all know just how infuriating they are. So that's one person's opinion, which now means we're going to ask for your opinion. But first I'm going to ask you to check in. So please come with your call sign, your name, and did you see tonight's movie, The Time Traveler or The Next One? And in fact, to keep things, well, we'll just call it The Time Travelers because that's what it was originally called. So here we go. Please check in now.
November 5, Bravo, Bravo. Bill. Yep, I saw it. J5 UIK. Alex, Sharon, Allen, I did see the movie. November Tango 5, Tango 1.
November Victor 5, Foxtrot, Virginia and Fort Worth. Yes, I saw the movie.
KB9S, okay. Sean, Fort Worth. Yes, I seen the movie.
Kilo Juliet 5, Golf November Foxtrot. I haven't seen the movie, so I'll probably just be listening and following along this evening without comment. Thank you for doing this, KJ5 DNF.
Oh, 5, Bravo to the Wookiee, J, or whatever. I saw the film.
Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima on Echo Link. Yes, I saw this movie.
Okay, I think the usual suspects have checked in. Let me go ahead. I'm going to need a fill here. I've got Bill, N5BB, Bill over in Irving. Yes, he saw the film. Next was Alex, BYK is all I got on your call. He said, yes, he saw the film as well. Alex, can you get your full call, please?
Kilo Juliet 5, Echo Yankee Kilo.
KJ5EYK. Alex. Yeah, you got covered over by Bill, so I just got like a little bit of your call and your name. So I got you checked in. NT5TM, Tony and Alice, you saw half the movie. NV5F, Virginia, Fort Worth. Yeah, she saw the movie. KB9SOK, Sean, also in Fort Worth. Yes, he saw the movie. And then KJ5GNF did not see the film. Could I get your name, please?
Sure. It's Brian, and I'm here in Terrell, KJ5GNF.
Very good. Well, thank you, Brian, KJ5GNF. Thank you for checking in as well, and it's perfectly okay to check in even if you haven't seen the film, because we generally ask, do you want to see it? Would it be something you would be interested in that? So we'll give you something here to do in a little bit. KG5BZW, Jay, near Rutherford. Yeah, you saw the film. WB50ZL, Brenda, over in Dallas, I believe. She said she did see the film. Anyone else like to check in? Please come now. Okay, well, that's a good start, and pretty much the usual suspects and a couple of new people. So we'll start with Bill. He won the double. So Bill and 5BB, you get to talk about the plot. So everybody think about the plot and what you want to say. Bill, go ahead. You're first.
Okay, thanks, Tom. This is Inside BB. Well, as you alluded to, it was kind of maddening, some things about the plot. Maddening in different ways than some other movies we've seen. First, basically this plot is the Christ story. So if you know the basic story of the New Testament, that's what this is based on. I mean, it's very straightforward. And but it seemed to be, what's going on here seems to be time travel or dimensional travel. The words time and dimension are kind of mixed up, but he did say he came from the future, so I think it's really time travel. You can think about it. This is Inside BB. So one thing about the bothered me was the Glenn, the person that came back from the future. When he arrived, only had a number on his tattooed to his shoulder. Through the movie, he said, "Oh, my brother came back before." And we are led to believe that that occurred in 0 AD, the Christ child. Although that would be an adult going back, so it's a little confusing. It wasn't a child going back, so that was confusing. But anyway, but then at the end of the movie, the most confusing thing happens when he walks out into the ocean and it blows up, which I didn't understand that. He said he went destruct, but he didn't just destruct, he literally blew up. How can he do that? And then, some days later, another copy of him came back. They said they all looked the same. And this other copy had the same serial number, but -2 rather than -1. So I'm confused. He said they all looked the same. He said his brother had already come back, but this other thing creature that washed up later seemed to be the same number but a -2. Was that his brother? Something was just confusing about that. And I was confused at the end about the fact that the doctor told him to go and look for the little hut with the boat. They weren't there. That wasn't explained or not. I didn't understand it. I don't understand that. Something is just weird, like they cut something out or they changed they filmed part of it and then they decided to change the final scenes. I don't know. I'm confused by all that. And they toy around with the relationship with the Catholic Church and everything, but they kind of toy around with it. It's not exactly completely explicit. So all this is kind of maddening. There are other things that are maddening. The one thing that bothered me the most during the first part of this movie is the female protagonist. Her husband was an astronaut and had died. We don't learn any more about that. What was he doing? Exactly how did he die? Anything about their previous life? We don't know anything about that. We don't see big pictures of him around. We don't get his son talking in detail about his dad. We don't get any of that. And that bothered me. You know, why didn't they talk about that? They kind of alluded. They could have had something about the astronaut and what he did, and a picture of him in his spacesuit and all kinds of things. They didn't do any of that. So to me, they kind of missed the ability to kind of make a more interesting movie. Well, I better stop now or I'll keep on talking too long. N5BB, thank you.
All right, thank you, Bill. Yeah, no problem. Let's see, KJ5EYK. Alex, you saw the film. What'd you think about the plot?
KJ5EYK. You know, I had really high hopes for this. I don't know if anybody caught it, but I had high hopes when I saw the numbers in the back, and it was an homage to Rollerball. Those are the same numbers that were used, style numbers in Rollerball. And I thought, ooh, this might be good. Of course, it turned out to be a stinker. But, however, there was one thing I noticed, and I agree with everything the other gentleman said. It's kind of a go-nowhere film. It's got kind of some, it's just kind of blah. I was like, wow, that's 2 hours of my life I'm going to get back. But I did notice one thing. Did anybody else notice the name of the book that Adrienne Barbeau was reading? Without keeping everybody in suspense.
The Bourne Identity.
She was watching the Bourne. She was reading the Bourne Identity. Now, the interesting thing with the Bourne Identity, if I remember that book correctly, it's been a lot of years, Jason Bourne gets washed off a fishing trawler in Greece. And he shows up on an island, and he's treated by a doctor that's an alcoholic. It's in the book. I remember that part in the book. So I thought, well, is this going to be some kind of parallel to that? And, of course, it went off into a million different directions with no real solid beginning, middle, or end. It was just a wandering mess. But I did have some high hopes for it. Unfortunately, they didn't pan out. You know, I would have liked to seen a few more different things. But, you know, it was a film. KJ5, back to the net.
Excellent. Thank you, Alex. Oh, and welcome back. I didn't recognize you have a very distinct voice. I always enjoy it when you come on this net because you always got some really interesting comments along the way, and you deliver them so effortlessly. They're quite fun. I agree with you. Bourne Identity was the book, and I thought, yeah, there's a parallel here. Of course, the movie hadn't come out or even been thought of as a movie yet, but yeah, interesting. Okay, next up is Tony, NT5TM. Tony, your thoughts on the plot from KE5ICX.
Well, I am particularly glad that there are people on the net who have thought more deeply about this plot than I have, and I suspect there are other deep thinkers like Virginia coming up, because I did not. I did notice the Bourne Identity, but I thought that was just because it was a popular book in the 80s. I didn't make the connection of that. Probably should have thought about that more deeply. By and large, I found the plot slow and unengaging. When I had got a late start watching the movie on Friday and when something interrupted me, I didn't feel any urge to come back. I thought, well, I could read a book or play with the dog or do some dishes or something. It just did not pull me in at all. So I'm interested to turn see how it turned out. I was glad to hear that from Tom and others because, yeah, this is not a well-known movie. I couldn't just go look it up, the way I could if it were Star Wars or something. So I appreciate everyone's comments, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going to try finishing this movie. NC5TM.
But Tony, maybe there's some nugget in there that you would have found really good in the second half of the film. Probably not, but you never know. Okay, next up is Virginia, NV5F. Virginia always has a tie-in to 2001: A Space Odyssey, and there is one living, breathing tie-in to it, but I don't know if she's going to mention that. But Virginia, go ahead. What did you think about the plot for our fine film from KE5ICX?
Thanks, Tom. Well, gosh, my challenge here is to just not talk forever. Yeah, I liked seeing Keir Dullea because he's, kind of cute, and he is Dave from 2001, and I did find it interesting that the woman's ex, that's not right, the woman's deceased husband had been an astronaut. They did discuss, she did tell, what did we call him last night? Glenn Dave. He had two names. She does tell him in a conversation that her husband was an astronaut and that he was lost in space when something happened where he was on an EVA of some kind and he came untethered or something. There wasn't a lot of detail given, but I thought that was interesting. And of course, I was making jokes about how, he was somewhere near Jupiter and got sucked into a Stargate or something, and then NASA gave her a big life insurance settlement, and she could move to this Greek island. So yeah, we had a lot of fun last night with the 2001 stuff. And I think that maybe he was hired to be in this movie because the director was trying to make an homage to science fiction and Stanley Kubrick and the slow-paced, mysterious, movie with the slow-burning plot and the inconclusive outcome, more than religious overtones in this one. So, I think there is a maybe if only a loose connection to 2001. There was a lot of kind of superficial links to science fiction. They named him Glenn after John Glenn because they're trying to find him a name, and she goes, John, and then she goes, or maybe Glenn, and then they decided to name him Glenn. There's the Star Wars stuff because the kid likes Star Wars, and the he even named his dog R2, which I thought was like, is he calling that dog R2? That's hilarious. So and then she mentions the woman mentions when Glenn Dave starts talking about his origins, and she thinks he's stoned, even though she's only gotten him to take one drag off of the joint. And she's like, oh, you're so stoned, and he's trying to actually describe to her where he came from, and then later she says, oh, you've read a lot of Asimov and and Heinlein and stuff like that. So there's some references to sci-fi authors. There's a lot of religious references here that are very overt. And when I was watching this movie, I thought, why didn't I see this a million times on cable? Because this was one of those kind of movies that you might see over and over again, on HBO, in the 80s when I was a kid. And it had a very early 80s, late 70s, early 80s flavor. You get a little Spielberg and Close Encounters, and you get some fish out of water, pre E.T. kind of stuff. If it was made in 81, I guess it predates E.T., but it still has some of that Spielberg, we kind of want, the kid's kind of a nerd. He carries a radio around. It opens with this weird, distorted voice where it's actually just him talking, doing like science fiction-y stuff. And so I try to develop, the story or sort of set up the character some, and I guess that's more round two stuff. But I found this movie pleasant. It was predictable because of all the similar movies that came out at the, around in those years, like the first half of the 80s, especially The Fish Out of Water, The Kind, Stranger / Alien / Time Traveler. He's kind of an innocent. He's sort of a fish out of water. He's pure-hearted. There were definitely some inconsistencies in, like, powers, but that's common in these kind of movies when somebody's got powers. Sometimes their powers will turn off and on conveniently for the plot, and I noticed that. I also thought it was odd that those kids who drowned couldn't swim. They grew up in a fishing village. They should have been able to swim. When the first part where he saves Timmy by bringing him back to life, that's a little more plausible. Because he fell off of a high cliff kind of thing, and so that part kind of set up what was pretty predictable afterwards. Was something's going to happen, and he's going to be quote unquote crucified, and he did end up being stuck in jail over the kids drowning, and fortunately, I'm glad they didn't go quite that direction with it. They would have gone, if they'd made this movie like 40 years later, they would have gone really probably dark with it. But and I think the end part where they didn't end up where the doctor had told them to go was because Glenn Dave was actually, he was planning on leaving his own way, and they got lost on the way to where they were supposed to go, but it was okay because he was planning on just exiting the scene, and that was kind of an ascension sort of thing. It was implied that his previous iteration had been, possibly the advent of Christ, to Earth. The return of Glenn Dave as -2. I guess the first iteration is probably -0. So I've kind of thought of that about the counting. I don't know. But yeah, the plot I found it pleasant. I found it very predictable, very cheesy in places, very pleasantly early 80s. The broad strokes, that were used to paint these characters. The doctor was lovable. You had that, and then you had like the jealous guy who was the one who framed, Glenn, and then you had the woman who was hung up on the jealous guy. That was interesting. That was kind of interesting a little bit there. She blackmailed him into having to marry her because she knew he was the one who basically poked a hole in the boat and framed Dave, and Glenn Dave, and kids died, and I don't know how he knew that they were going to go out in that boat. That was kind of dumb. Like he put the hole in the bottom of the boat, I guess thinking, oh, well, Glenn's going to take a bunch of crazy rowdy kids out in the boat, during the church service for Easter Vigil or whatever they were having the service for, and the kids are going to drown. I don't know how he could figure out a way to frame him that way. That was kind of silly. But he got his in the end. The angry, bitter lady who was jealous of him because he was, interested in what's her face? What was her name? Andrea or whatever. yeah, I probably should quit there. I mean, I actually really liked this movie. I thought it had a happy ending. It was, you know, I found it easy to watch, easy to understand. I liked the atmosphere of the Greek town. You know, it was an interesting backdrop for a kind of pseudo-science fiction, kind of almost an homage. It did. There were moments, even though it was kind of predictable, there were moments where there was actually some good, you know, suspense, like, oh, you know, you knew something bad was about to happen, you know, and it was a little uncomfortable in places. And there was, like, cheesy, awkward, like, fish out of water humor. If that kind of humor can be hard to do without it getting awkward or just kind of, you know, awkward drug humor is I never really liked that very much. So, but overall, not too bad. Easy to understand, predictable. Lots of plot holes about, you know, supernatural powers. A little too obvious of a you know, connection or a parable or an analog to the life of Jesus, implying that this guy might have even been Jesus or his brother was Jesus or whatever. But you know, I'm a Christian. I've been a Christian my whole life, and that doesn't offend me at all. I thought it was kind of sweet and innocent and pure-hearted, and I enjoyed it in V5F.
All right, thank you, Virginia. Okay, I think there's interesting. Okay, I have some comments, but I'm going to wait till my turn. Sean, KB9SOK. Sean, your thoughts on the plot for our film, the next one, or The Time Traveler, singular?
Yeah, this is KB9SOK. Well, this film, for me, was kind of a tough one, mostly because of pacing. Yeah, I think it was an interesting concept, but the thing was just very, 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 very slow. It didn't seem to really want to get moving. We just had a lot of film of people just walking around, and it made it hard to keep your attention on the film, at least for me. You know, little things keep me just barely engaged in this. But yeah, probably for me, one of the biggest plot things was really, just the whole, you know, not being real clear of really where this guy came from. You know, even though he said he's from another dimension, but yet he's from our future, he's from a different dimension. He might be from a different dimension from their future, but it was just kind of confusing. You know, so my initial thoughts were, you know, we usually like good explanations. This was one time I think maybe they should have simplified it. It just simply said that he's from, you know, our distant future, and just kind of left it at that, instead of kind of twisting those terms around. You know, that part was just, you know, I think was just, somebody didn't think that one through. Or at least that was my initial thoughts, and I'll get to that later. But yeah, obviously the story started out, as everybody said, they kind of led you down the path that maybe he was Jesus, and then, of course, the twist at the end, I guess, was finding out that he was his brother. So, you know, initial thoughts was, is this movie trying to say that, you know, really, you know, God and all that was really just us from the very distant future? And then maybe when, you know, Jesus came back, it was literally just to try to help the people. But then they kept talking about this barrier, which didn't make a lot of sense either. They never really explained that. And if they were from their future, why did they have to cross a barrier? You know, exactly what is that? You know, once again, I think if they just said that, you know, everything was the same in the future, everybody was the same, so they're fascinated history, and then maybe, you know, there was a group of quote-unquote rogue people that found a way to travel back, but obviously it's a one-way ticket. That might make more sense. But yeah, this is just it was kind of weird in that respect. It just, for me, it just kind of took me out of the story because it just didn't really keep a logical path there at all. You know, and then later on, I started to kind of think that, okay, maybe really what they were trying to say is that, you know, they were saying they're from another dimension, there's this barrier to go across. Maybe where they screwed up was saying it was time travel, and maybe the barrier they're talking about, maybe they're saying that really this guy and his brother are really from heaven. Is that the barrier? You know, maybe once they're saying you cross over, that you lose track of time and you don't get to see what's going on. And that's why you're fascinated with what's going on Earth. And maybe that's why they're trying to get across that quote barrier to see what was going on Earth. So then I thought, well, maybe that's really what the film is trying to say happened. So I kind of took it two different ways, just to see clearly what it was trying to say. So that's kind of what, you know, kind of made it interesting. Of course, I did, like everybody said, I found of course, some of the references, stuff from the 80s, obviously, the Star Wars stuff and all that. I did find that rather cute, get my attention, and I thought it was hilarious, too, that the dog was named R2, being that I have a fascination with R2, trying to build one. So anytime there's Star Wars involved, I'm usually interested in this, but, you know, it's just a kid's thing. So yeah, and then obviously, yeah, the convenient power thing was also seemed strange at the end that the, you know, you couldn't save the kids. And yeah, too, I thought it was wild too. How could every single kid not know how to swim in a fishing village? You know, that didn't make a lot of sense. And I actually don't think that the one guy was trying to actually frame that guy for killing the kids, because there is no way he could have. I think he was actually just trying to kill Glenn. You know, or maybe he thought maybe Glenn and the lady went out for a lot of rides. Maybe he was trying to get revenge on the lady and thinking that, you know, they were out far enough they wouldn't be able to get back. That's what I think was going on there, but obviously don't know for sure. But, yeah, this one I think had potential. I can't say that I didn't dislike it, but I also can't say I really liked it either. It's just kind of in between. I just think there was too many plot holes for me. I liked the idea of what they were trying to go with it. Trying to maybe in some ways give you a couple different perspectives of what could have happened, but then again, it might have been nice had they stayed more. But anyway, so yeah, that's all I got for this round. Back to that. KB9, that's okay.
All right, thank you, Sean, and good comments. Okay, Brian, hopefully you're still there, KJ5GNF. I see you also over on Echolink there. Well, what do you think? Is this a movie that you would want to see? Does this sound like anything you've seen before? What do you think of our comments so far from KE5I6? Okay, it's possible he fell asleep or stepped away. That can happen. Next up is Jay, KG5BZW. Jay, your thoughts on the plot? Go ahead, from KE5I6.
BZW. So, the first half was just so slow. It picked up a little bit at the end, but even though it picked up, there were just certain inconsistencies, or at least lack of explanation that pardon me, I'll try to organize the thoughts. I probably should have written down stuff to talk about instead of just free-winging it here. I had to stop multiple times because I was just not interested. I'm getting tired. I need to do something, or I will fall asleep or something. Just say, no, I can't even remember the first part. I stopped so many times. I'm drawing some blanks here. But I just thought like the sabotage sequence was a little bit weird. Hold on one second. I'm am on my mobile device, so unfortunately I can't see chat while I'm talking. Golly, I really cannot remember the first part, but it kind of bugged me. Things like, I don't know, the whole sabotage and the kids getting killed was just seemed kind of random out of nowhere. It's like we had to do something to get the plot going, and so we introduced all this amongst all this religious stuff, and that really just kind of annoyed the heck out of me. Certain things like at him, like the lady asking him why he knew that she was investigating him when they went to, I guess, Greece to, the Greek mainland or whatever, when, of course, he had the forethought, the ESP or whatever to see the kid. It's like, what's the difference between the two situations? I mean, it's still a telepresence of some sort. I mean, if he can do that, why couldn't he, maybe, I don't know, maybe he could do it wow, but maybe there just is not enough explanation there. It just annoyed me. I don't know, there's a number of montages that just seem to be more there to add padding to the movie than to actually do just to do the story somehow. I mean, montages can be done well. I mean, there's the great, like the Rambo, not Rambo. I'm thinking that Sylvester Stallone with the boxing film season he's famous for the original. And of course, that great music too. So, I mean, that really is a great montage. These were just, I mean, they were interesting, but you see them as kind of a documentary or something, not really whatever this was. Reset. I had to disconnect Echo Link. It wouldn't allow me to transmit. So the ending was just, or what I thought of the ending. It was where he self-destruct. So it's just, oh, what? It's like, it went too early. It really did. I could not. I just don't. I don't mind the aligning of the story with, the crunch or whatever. It's just the very ending, the special effects of that. Couldn't they have just made it a little bit more focused instead of it? I mean, yeah, it definitely made me actually go, wow, but that was like, wow, it's not like oh, wow, that was kind of amazing, but that was just like, oh, wow, that was kind of stupid. So, I hate like some of this film, like some of the films like that. But it's not on it's not on a good list for me. I'll leave it there. KG5BGW.
All right, thank you, Jay. And Brian, I saw your note, and I'm going to come back to you here in just a second, as soon as I finish here with Brenda. So I'll go ahead and finish the list. And WB50ZL, Brenda, what did you think about the plot for our fine film, The Next One, or The Time Traveler, or, geez, I just lost an hour, 2 hours of my life, whatever the name of this movie was. Go ahead.
WB50ZL. Well, the 80s were a weird time. A lot of movies were made in what I would consider experiments. Let's try new stuff. And I think from that category of telling people what's going on, bring the plot, or not having a plot. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it, and it was watchable, but there were some things where you go, why? Like, why did they leave the kid alone all day? He's too young. And why wasn't he in school? The cliffs where he could fall off? You know, this doesn't seem reasonable. And then, begin with, Glenn just shows up naked. Didn't he have clothes on where he came from? What are the clothes? And he speaks English but doesn't know what a name is. So they're just match, just out of whack. He acted strange, which I kind of understand, but there was never a good explanation as to why he wanted to come back and what all that was. And, you know, what, the Podunk fishing village, why not come to a big... His purpose for coming back. They weren't real clear about that. And that he was a Christ figure, but big life, that's for sure. So, what? You know, that was a little dead space for him to. Like, what? And then, why did he have to go back? And why was it so weird? And then, why? And what's he going to do now? They can calculate what his purpose is. Not for doing anything particularly. All right, I'm going to leave it there. WB50ZL, back to net.
All right, thank you, Brenda. Okay, let me go back up to Brian. Brian, KJ5GNF. Is this a hit or a miss? Would you go and watch this film? Would you spend the time? Or would you go and watch something else, or maybe another film like it? There are several, Starman for one. What do you think from KE5IC?
I have to say, this is probably a film that I would see. Listening to all of your comments, the film fits in that categories or parables, and I have to say I'm a sucker for those. Stories seem to be lining up with the subsequent Matrix movies came out, they weren't quite as good. And so I feel like maybe this is going to be in that latter category. But knowing that takes the pressure off a little bit. So I could maybe start focusing on, the writer's the viewpoints and, what he's really trying to convey as part of the story. But, yeah, thank you all very much for your comments. Very fascinating, and thank you for bringing this movie for our discussion tonight. KJ5GNF.
All right, thank you, Brian. And okay, we got a thumbs up on that one. So as far as willing to see the film, okay, I'll make my comments. I guess I have some problem with understanding the reason for the time travel. Maybe it was mentioned in the film. Maybe I fell asleep or something. But this is time travel. Time travel paradoxes always rear their ugly heads. So I have a basic question. He says it could have been a kindred spirit. That was my brother, who was Christ. So it was a time traveler, apparently, a different dimension, whatever, that went back to Earth, and that started the whole Christ story? Or was it something else? Was there a reason to go back? Was time travel just something to do? Was there a purpose to it? He did mention that everybody was the same by then. Well, he's part of the human race too. Everybody's different. How does everybody end up being the same? And if he is the same, what is he, a clone? Is that what it's devolved to? And why the touristing back to Earth in the earlier times? I don't understand that. Maybe that would have been a way of actually one of the things to explore a little more than what they did. I understand and I get the fact that they wanted to make it a small story and with the characters, but I'm not so sure. There's no skin in the game for the rest of us. What do we get out of this? How do we feel about it? And the fact that he just explodes himself at the end, and then we get another one, and another one, and another one. So what's going on? Are they turning them out one after another, or is this because the one has exploded and it's no longer there and we need another one? I don't know. There's not enough here for me to really feel compelled or sympathetic. I think Delay did a nice job in this slow, enigmatic way to endear himself to the audience, certainly, but maybe we can get into that in the other part. But it's a small story. It's supposed to be able to help us with our interest, but I don't know. And then it's reset at the end. We're back to the beginning, but we're more receptive of it. Maybe the idea is that this is going to save humanity in some way. I don't know. It's time travel paradox. If that's the case, and everybody can travel back in time, you can make a mistake. Let's try again. And does the time travel move forward relative to forward moving time? Will the next one appear again in the future, or will he appear in the past? And if he does appear in the future, meaning sequentially on time zero, then these trips become better and better? I don't know. These are questions that might need answering or might make the story more interesting. I just wonder. Time travel stories always bother me because they don't take in these bigger issues, and they should be addressed. I really think they should be addressed. They're addressed in the Back to the Future, and that's a comedy. So address them. Allow them to be a natural part of the story. If you want to use a religiosity to the thing, that's fine too. But explain the reason why. Why is religion important? How does it factor? If Christ never came into existence, what would be mankind's ultimate destiny? Certainly the first time around we would know that. And if these characters exist and they disappear from their future, and into the past, what happens to the future? Does it get altered? Nosebleed stuff. Okay, this is KE5ICX Net Control. We're doing the Afterglow Movie Net. We're talking about the next one, or the Time Traveler, depending on where it was released in the world, from 1981? 1981. So we only have a few characters, but this might be interesting. Let's go ahead and talk about characterization. So we'll start at the top with Bill and 5BB. Bill, what do you got about characterization?
This is in 5BB. Thank you, Bill. Well, since I was at the top of the list, and I got to bring a couple more comments about the plot as I talk about the characterization. Glenn seems to have two hearts. What's going on there?
Good point.
Everything else about him looks like a regular human that we know of. Why does he have two hearts? If he was so far in the future that people had evolved or they changed to have two hearts, you'd think that he wouldn't look the same, or he wouldn't be able to speak English or something. You notice his English was perfect. No problem understanding or talking it. If you go back 200 years, you could understand the people back then if they didn't sound the same. But I don't know. That makes no sense to me. Another thing that bothered me about the whole movie, there were Easter eggs everywhere. The Bourne identity, all these other things. There are all these little things they threw in there that they wanted you to notice. For instance, you know, he was in the prison and he disappeared from it. So this is like the story of Christ disappearing from the tomb. Okay? And then disappears. Nobody can find him, which is what happened to Glenn. He went out and self-destructed. I didn't understand. They all look the same in the future. When he talked about his brother, maybe it was generically just another one of the creatures. You know? I don't know. When he talked about his brother, was it literally his brother? He seemed to be a little weird about sex. Maybe they were all fit together. It's like just dumped in there all together. Did you notice? So talking about, again, characterizations, I guess, Glenn, at a point, they try to have a name for him, and he suggests the name Jesus. Well, come on, isn't that over the top? And then the woman suggests, the protagonist suggests, oh, no, we better not call you Jesus here in Greece. That's not going to go over. I don't know. They threw it over the top that way. Why was he trying to use that name? Did he already think that he was another copy of the Jesus? Another thing about Glenn, when at the end, when he self-destructed, I think he told the kid, whose name I forgot, I think he told him that on the timeline, I guess to prevent problems with history, he needed to just kind of disappear. And then you notice that, what did the kid do? He embellished the story. He told his mom that not that Glenn had self-destructed, but he'd gone off in a boat to somewhere else to come back later. Just kind of reminds you of the Christ story, and people are repeating the story afterward. I don't know. Again, Easter egg through the whole thing. The premonition remote viewing thing, if you talk about characterization of that, that bothered me too. If he could see the kid dying, why didn't he see the boat being damaged? Why didn't he see the other kids in the boat dying? That made no sense. Characterization of the doctor, he was kind of a dark character. He was kind of the anti-religious character, although he wasn't completely anti-religious. But he was, I think, down on organized religion. And that kind of added an interesting take to the whole thing. Also, the guy that put the knife in the boat, killed the kids essentially, character, obviously. Judas Iscariot. And the whole thing with the woman that was trying to kind of convince him to live with her was just over the top. That characterization thing was really weird. I didn't understand the characterization of the woman, the main character, that why she didn't ask more about it. It's like she didn't want to know early on, because I think maybe she thought he might be the killer. But why didn't she ask more about the future, how he lived? She said something about you might have a family in the future, but she didn't push it. She just seemed to ignore that. She was living for today and didn't really care. I didn't understand that at all. So I didn't understand a lot of the characterization things there. They seemed to me to be just kind of dumped out there and walked away from. I guess that's it. N5BB.
All right, thank you, Bill. Yeah, I hear you. Okay, next is Alex, KJ5EYK. Alex, your thoughts about characterization from KE5ICS.
Yeah, I enjoyed the characters. There was a thought that came to my mind, though. Adrienne Barbeau, back in the day, she was always a fun one to watch. But unfortunately, in this one, she wasn't wearing what she wore in Escape from New York. Got to be there for the 80s. The one thing I did think about, though, is there was a theory that was going around, and it's kind of supported in the film a little bit, that Christ wasn't Christ as we know him, but Christ was a space alien. And at the end of the film, he happens to mention, I came through looking for my brother, but I was 2,000 years late. So he could be perhaps part of the other race. There are a lot of theories that go around that say that man didn't evolve, he was seen here by alien races. There's all kinds of great stuff out there. But, I was thinking about the very end of the film, when he crosses back over, where everybody's assuming that he's self-destructed. He didn't have to self-destruct. He could have opened the portal and gone through it just as well. When they showed up, they had that storm, the lightning, the whole scene, and they show him on the rocks. So maybe that was just part of the transition. All in all, yeah, the character was just very lukewarm, kind of blasé. Like I said, it was not a film like I'd watch again, but that's all I've got. Back to the net.
Thanks, Alex. Next is Tony, NT5TM. Tony, you didn't finish the film, but characterization, please.
Well, I can't give you too much of a breather here. The characterization was simply not striking to me. Everyone seems very pro forma, a kid who does kid things. That's a nice dog, though. A mother who is mothering the doctor who is, makes me think of the intoxicated, doctor in an old Western movie in a Western town. The Fisher people in their identical caps. Part of why I didn't really get drawn in to finish it was not only did the plot seem extremely slow, but maybe I didn't give them enough time. I'll certainly give them the benefit of the doubt, but the characters did not seem interesting or engaging to me. I did not want to find out more about them. At T5 p.m.
Okie dokie. Thank you, Tony. Next, Virginia, NV5F. Your thoughts on characterization.
Okay, well, I agree generally that the characters in this were pretty standard. You have the fish out of water who was sort of he had that kind of naive self-confidence, kind of fear of nothing, and then just the whole, I could be, my name could be Jesus. that might go over in Mexico, but probably not in a Greek Orthodox place. Why, I don't know. Why there's a million guys named Jesus in Mexico and Central America, you know, but no one in America would name their kid Jesus. So I think that's kind of funny. The kid was a pretty standard, cute, you know, 80s kid. The mom was a desperate widow who had a dominant personality, and then, you know, and then Glenn had sort of this almost happy-go-lucky, you know, what could possibly go wrong, you know, doctor, you know, like you said, the doctor was, he was the disappointed character, you know, he had lived through a lot, his life has been rough, he's everything, including religion, disappointed him, and he just hates how much evil is in the world, and, you know, to the point where he's practically, you know, he figures out kind of what Glenn is, and he's the one who can kind of see what's going on, you know, so we're sort of seeing the story more from his point of view at times. And then you got the stock bad guy who's just mean because he's jealous, and the unhappy, miserable, jealous people. And then all the other people in the village, you know, they were just, I think the whole idea was like, let's tell this in a sort of a colorful location. So you've got, you know, all the other people in the village, and it's trying to make it, you know, just give it some kind of quirkiness. But yeah, I thought that the mom was, you know, she was a little brazen and kind of pushy and one-dimensional as far as, you know, being kind of self-involved about it. Like, I just want somebody to be with, and, you know, and then the cute kid going, hey, Mom, you know, kind of, he was sort of encouraging her to, you know, liking the idea that she was meeting somebody, and so that was kind of cute. And then Keir Dullea is just, you know, he's just a nice-looking guy with kind of a nice personality, a nice voice, a nice presence. He's pleasant. He did well playing that character. She did good playing her character, you know, just the stereotype, but kind of dominant personality female role that was starting to happen in the 80s. And, you know, she had the 80s hair, and, you know, they threw in the you know, 80s recreational drugs, and so yeah, characters were all very standard and very predictable. And I did notice, I didn't know that John Carpenter, I did not know that connection, but I did notice when we were watching, you know, and the year on the movie is 1984, so I'm hearing some conflicting, I guess maybe it was just made earlier, it was made in 81, and it didn't get released until 84, which is the year that Keir Dullea was in 2010, and 2010 was in theaters at the same time as Starman. I'm not sure which movie prevailed as the biggest winner that Christmas season, but I did see Starman, and I did not see this back when it was out, but when I was
A little yard project.
Like, interesting. Starman, now knowing that Starman very well could be sort of a high-dollar ripoff of this. And Brenda said something about people being naked. Well,
so I have to make sure it's...
You know, from the Terminator, it was in Starman, it was, you know, it was like, you know, which is real. Somebody shows up from another dimension or wherever, and, you know, they show up without any clothes. You know, maybe clothes can't time travel. That would be kind of realistic, I think. But it's also got like a good way to throw a little naked humor in, like kind of harmless nudity humor, which this movie definitely had. So, and, you know, very, very innocently portrayed. sexuality, and I don't mind that. And you know, leaves enough to the imagination to where you're not just, you know, squirming in your seat watching people, you know, go too far. That was one of the things I liked about the 80s PG rated, before we had PG-13, you know, the PG rated romance where everything's implied, and you can, you know, just enjoy the movie. But yeah, I agree generally that everything was, characters were pretty, you know, pretty typical, but I found Glenn to be pleasant and likable, and yeah, back to you what you said, Tom, about the plot. That was like, there. If you're going to have interdimensional or time travel or what, there need to be some rules. There needs to be a motivation for why it happened, why now, why this particular time, why you could just go, well, I'm in trouble here, so I'm going to go back where I came from, and then I'll, you know, another iteration of me will return. Well, then what happens? Does Glenn go to the village as his new self, and he looks exactly the same, and everybody, like, freaks out because he's back, or do they just go to another island, or go somewhere else where no one knows him? You know, he doesn't remember anything, but it's kind of like, okay, let's start all over, and will it be the same this time around? So yeah, I get you, Tom, on the fact that there's no rules. I just kind of unplugged from all the stuff like that when I was watching this, and I was like, oh, this movie's just kind of pleasant and, you know, inconsistent in a lot of places. It was funny that the kid's name was Tim, and he had a collie who was not nearly as smart as Lassie, so that was pretty hilarious. NV5F.
All right, Virginia, you had to go there. Timmy and his collie. Okay. Next is Sean, KB9S. Okay, Sean, your thoughts on characterization?
Yeah, this is KB9S. Okay. I don't know. I really got a lot to add, but everybody's already said characters. Yeah, you know, oh, you know, nothing really stands out for me. I think, yeah, when he hit it with the doctor, it does remind you of the old drunk doctors from the old westerns. As we joked about last night, did any of these people in this town actually have a job? They never seem to be doing anything other than going to church and just walking around. Yeah, it's you know, not a whole lot there. Yeah, probably maybe the dog was my favorite. I don't since he was named R2. But then again, the dog is what caused the kid to die, so maybe not such a good character. Lassie wasn't a good dog that time. So, yeah, I really don't have a whole lot to add this one. So yeah, back to that. KB9S, okay.
All right, thank you, Sean. Okay, I'm skipping over you, Brian. That's because we already antagonized you enough. So I'm going to go over to Jay, KG5BZW. Jay, your thoughts on characterization. Go ahead.
This is KG5BZW. I don't know how much I could really complain about the characters. Of course, I guess if we're gonna go from evil to good, well, we've got the jealous person who really didn't seem to be that evil until that weird thing where he sabotaged that boat. And I do agree with other comments that I don't think the intent. I think if you could see from the reaction, his reaction, that it was like, oh, wait a second, that wasn't quite what I intended to happen. That I'm inferring, which, you know, could be anything. an inference is not an implication. Then, of course, I didn't expect that the jealous ex of that I interested in our main gal to become essentially that evil too, even though, yeah, okay, he gets she gets her husband back or whatever, her boy back, is still pretty crummy, but so, okay, I'll admit that was kind of interesting, if not kind of weird, but still, maybe not, I mean, it's like it's one of those things like you call stuff in film that just absolutely was like people ripping her a lot. Anyway, I don't know. I do want to call him Dave, Glenn. I do wish that. I mean, I understand what they were trying. I think they were trying to do, given the whole structure of the story and whatnot, and not really given him a much of a personality. He was kind of a blank slate of sorts. Can't really complain with that. Just by the overall story, as I'm not sure that the story dictated anything else. No, I'm tortured by the dome. That weird death sequence with the kid. There's some. If I had written that down, I could say. I think I'm going off more on plot than anything there. It's just, I mean, really, the kid lives on that island. Why would, I know kids are not the most rational beings here, but I've just, because, I was a kid once, I remember being in much more dangerous situations. That whole thing was obviously made so that, our main guy can heal him and whatnot. And also the thing with this is the kid being swallowed up by the sea. Well, obviously that was something that, well, he could heal, but you have to be in the presence of them. Well, they removed the presence of those kids, so he couldn't heal and, whatever, but now I'm getting distracted. Anyway, it's like, I trees that were, granted, there wasn't over a rocky cliff right now, but, way up in a tree when I was a kid and didn't really have any issue, and just, I don't know, whatever. Just, and the dog, not really, just, that whole scene was weird, along with some other scenes. It is character related because I kind of want the characters to be consistent in their appearance. I hate to use the word intelligence, but it's awareness or whatever. What would the kid be aware of? What would the dog be aware of? Why is this situation happening? And it just didn't seem to line up. The lady was nice, and nothing wrong with what she did. The main gal, I'm calling her, of course I forget her name. Not very good with names, so forgive me for not knowing her name, but, oh no, I actually kind of liked her, but, she did what she could, the actress did what she could with that character. Other than that, I don't just coming out of the doctor. Stop this time rambling on too long. So, and it's the next person. Thank you, Bobby.
All right, thank you, Jay. Next up is Brenda, WB50ZL. Brenda, your thoughts on characterization?
WB50ZL. Well, I don't have any real about it. I thought it was okay. The main actors are well-established professional actors, and the amateurist tendencies, like we see in so many, sure annoyed me. It looked like he acted like he was supposed to. I just so annoying. And then you sort of, hey, it is Dr. Bong midnight, and I am going. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm probably not going to say anything else after. Be listening. WB50ZL, back to that.
All right, thank you, Brenda. Yeah, I'm beginning to fade a little bit too. But let me say this about characterization, then we'll get close to closing it out. Not enough script, not enough characterization, to be honest with you. Yes, you can have the romance in that, and that was fine, I guess, but it just didn't ring true. The doctor was the doctor. Nobody cared about the doctor. He was drunk. The kid didn't get a lot to do in the thing. He could have been endearing, and when he died, I went, okay, he's dead. It was not like, oh my God, this is terrible, interesting in the 2 hours that we had to watch them. So I just felt it was lacking. But again, I think it was a weak script. That was what we had. Started out with a good idea, and it seemed interesting. The mysterious parts are always fun. But then as time goes on, it becomes less interesting and the payoff is usually pretty poor. So, and there's no exception on this one. Okay, I ask if anyone has any final comments. So make them short because I'm fading too. It's midnight. If anybody has any final comments, please come to your call now.
Elvis has left the building.
NV5F.
Okay, we have one. NV5F. Virginia, go ahead. You get the final word.
Okay, well, I've made it pretty obvious that I enjoyed this movie, but as good of actors as you have, or as cute as Curie looks in a Greek fishing cap and a pea coat and a fishing sweater, and as much as I like science fiction references, and as much as I enjoy a Christ analogy and whimsical, supernatural, early to mid '80s Spielberg-esque thing, what you just said rings very true, and that is you have a little bit of humor, a little bit of heart, some naivety, some good elements. But when you have a story, you have to know who the main character is, and you have to know what they want, and at least a little bit of why they want it. That can even change in their arc. But then you have to know what's trying to stop them from having it, who's trying to stop them, what or whom is against them, and that wasn't real clear here. know, there was no clear enmity between Glenn and the jealous guy, and they tried to set that up with the you know, the life of Christ. Everybody loves him until one day everybody hates him. That, you know, so it was a loose enough analogy to Jesus that can be hard when you make it so obvious that's what it is, but then you make it such a loose analogy that then it kind of comes apart, and I think that's kind of what happened. The music was weird. It would go from Greek fishing village to weird sci-fi synthesizer 80s music, which I thought was interesting. And there was not really a whole lot of special effects per se. There was a few visual effects. And the pop song at the end was very 80s and very cheesy. And everybody who left before the end of the credits didn't get to see the very before its time end sequence where Glenn shows up again, and the kid's like, hey, I'll help you. You know exactly who he is and exactly how he wants it to go and how his mom wants it to go. And there's a little bit of a happy, little tear-jerky happy moment at the end that I, you know, just harkens back to things from my childhood that I thought were pleasant. And if I had seen this when I was like 10 on HBO, I probably would have laughed and cried and wanted to see it all over again a few more times because, you know, that's what it made me think of, some movie I loved when I was a kid. So that's it for me. NV5.
All right. Thank you very much, Virginia. And yeah, I sat through the whole thing and saw that at the ending. Yes, I did. Okay, next week's movie, if everybody is ready, is called The Grand Tour. It's another time travel movie, this one from 1991. After returning to a hometown, a widowed innkeeper battles a mysterious band of disaster groupies from the future. ... Really, it's a thing. Also on Tubi. So we'll do this one next week. Okay, that's it for me. I'm going to say 7-3 to everybody. Have a good evening. Maybe I'll watch a little bit of Lost in Space. I'll probably fall asleep like I did last week, but we'll see. I forget which one this is. I've already checked out mentally. Okay, see y'all next time. Bye-bye, and bye-bonds.
KJ5, UIK, good night, everybody. 73.